first candle to recognize Buddhism. Chaos is inherent in all compounded things. Strive on with diligence. We light the second candle to recognize Judaism. The truth is that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasp the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. We light the third candle to recognize Islam. There is no creature on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings except what they are communities like you. We light the fourth candle to recognize Taoism. Human consciousness has not adjusted itself to a relational and integrated view of nature. We must see that consciousness is neither an isolated soul nor the mere function of a single nervous system, but of that totality of interrelated stars and galaxies, which makes a nervous system possible. We light the fifth candle to recognize Christianity. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the needy. We light the sixth candle to recognize Sikhism. As all creation has the same origin and end, humans must have consciousness of their place in creation and their relationship with the rest of creation. We light the final candle to recognize Native American spirituality. Perhaps you have noticed that even in the slightest breeze, you can hear the voice of the cotton tree. This, we understand, is its prayer to the Great Spirit, for not only men, but all things and all beings pray to him continually in a different way. The theme for June, Protect the Vulnerable. This reading is by Terry Pattern, Empowerment. If a new republic of the heart is coming into being, it is taking the form of an insistent impulse to choose integrity, to be honest with ourselves and each other, to serve the health of the whole. So if you can just take these words into that inner sanctuary for a few minutes. So as we just breathe in together, we know that God is breathing us, loving us, that it is at the core of our soul. It is in every ounce of our being. We are just inherently part of that divinity. We are part of that love and light and power. How blessed we are, knowing that we are in that integrity, that we are whole and complete and perfect, that we have that beautiful divine design within our own being, integrated, loving us, always protecting. And so I know that that same energy, that same power of God is orchestrating this beautiful service on this very calm and peaceful day, knowing that we are recognizing that divinity within each other and in our community, knowing that we are absolutely uplifted. We are united with that spirit, united with our neighbors. We are part of that greatness. And so I know from the band to Reverend Cece, to the Children's Church, and to all of us here in this congregation and out in our communities, we are blessed. We are so blessed. And so I know that that energy that surrounds us, loves us, and continues to work through us every moment of our day. And I give such thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And together we say,
and so it is.
So Sherry Buckner is here. You know, she posted something on Facebook yesterday that is so perfect for this week. It's been a stormy week everywhere. Storms in here, storms out there, storms everywhere. And then the materials for today's talk kind of dropped into my lap. And then Sherry posted yesterday that she saw a stray dog and stopped to pick it up and took it to her vet. and they found a chip and they got the dog back to its owners. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you. Because part of what today is really about is taking the time to notice those things and follow up on them. So, lots of people would have said, I don't have time to deal with this dog. Sherry made the time and it was great. I loved it. Thank you. You know, the materials for today come from our book for the month, which is by Terry Patton. It's called A New Republic of the Heart, and it's splendid. It's a splendid book, and it was brought to our attention in Centers for Spiritual Living by one of my colleagues, Reverend David Alt, who until recently was the senior minister in Atlanta. He's since been replaced by David Alexander, who is another fabulous guy. Anyway, David Alt runs the Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, and the foundation's mission is to transcend illiteracy in the world. And it works in Cambodia and Central and South America and other places. And in Guatemala, the foundation sponsors scholarships for young girls to get literate. And these young girls are trapped in factories making tortillas for 17 hours a day, 6 in the morning till 11 at night. And each child's parents get paid $60 a month for turning their daughter over to the tortilla factory. This is a cycle of ongoing stuff that's been going on forever. And unless something disrupts that situation, the cycle just continues. There's no future for these girls beyond that. The parents don't want to lose the income. It's the only income they have sometimes, $60 a month. And they don't want their daughters to take time off to go to literacy, to become literate. And the girls want something different. They don't want to be stuck in this cycle of poverty and working 17 hours a day until they're old enough to have their own daughters to send to the factory. So Reverend David was writing about this, and he said, you know, we in the foundation have to work both ends of the stick. We have to try to meet the soul, heart demands of these girls, and at the same time instill in the parents a vision of the empowerment of their children. What a dismal, sad thing that is, and it happens all over the world. You know, in Cambodia, he was addressing the same thing, and you know, it's the same sort of cycle that's killing our planet, because in some of the places where, you know, big corporations from the West come in, they offer money to very poor people to let them slash and burn the forest to grow, I hate to say it, palm oil, watch your labels, or feed for cattle, and then the people don't have anywhere to grow the food that they need to survive, and this intergenerational cycle gets set up. And it's happening right here and right now on the west side of Dayton, where we have poor school funding, segregation, lack of good nutrition. There's a cycle of poverty and addiction and separation that gets set up and just goes on and on and on. Unless something disrupts these cycles, they have a way of just continuing to spin. You know, we see fires and drought and flood and hurricanes and tornadoes where they're not supposed to be, and they perpetuate themselves without a disruption. Unless there is a major shift, things just keep sort of going on. And major shift is hard. Major shift is hard for everybody, for each one of us. It's scary. It requires us to deeply change, and individually and collectively, and we don't know how to do it. And we don't know whether what we do will even be effective. And that's the state of our world right now. It's the state of our world. So instead of changing the world, we change the subject, right? I change the subject. I try to find and I rationalize why I don't do some of the things I could do. Like I'm too tired, or I'm too busy, or I don't know what to do. Whatever, I can come up with an excuse. We all can. We're good at making excuses. But here's what I know. There's a reason that you and I are here on this planet at this moment. There's a reason we're here. I think we're here because we are the good Samaritans of our world. We're here to put our hearts together and our minds together and find a way through the scariness, to the shift. Because when shift happens, the end result is often way more than we ever imagined. Way more. We have had good Samaritans in the world to teach us forever, right? Some of them we know the names of: Moses, Jesus, Buddha, all those that were called Bodhisattva, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., the ones who turned their hearts to the world and their minds to finding their way through the scariness into something bigger and more wonderful. The Dalai Lama recently said that the next Buddha will not be a person, but a shift in consciousness. And you and I are part of that shift of global consciousness. And it is shifting. We are the good Samaritans of our time. And remember the story. Jesus told us in a parable, there was a man who'd been robbed and beaten and left by the side of the road. And a whole bunch of people passed by for one excuse or another. I'm too busy, I don't have time. I can't touch him, he's unclean. That's my favorite excuse. I might get dirty if I touch this person. And finally, a Samaritan of the despised Samaritans. That was the guy who stopped and bound up the wounds and got him to a place where he could heal. He didn't hesitate to prevent further injury for this guy. He didn't hesitate to protect him from further injury. And my friend, Reverend David Alt, wrote this. He said, if the Samaritan had simply stopped, paused, and offered a prayer to the one injured, I doubt the story would leave us with any historical impact. What I call Samaritan energy, said Reverend David, is feeding those who are hungry, sheltering those who are homeless, clothing those who are naked as a step to their greater good. I love that. He's not saying prayer doesn't work. Prayer does work and we know it. What he's saying is it works in part because it spurs us into becoming what we want to see in the world, right? We want to see kindness and care for each other in the world, and we are kinder and we care for each other better. Our action, actually, when we do those things, is what helps other people rise to their higher good. It's really hard to have a shift in consciousness if you're wounded or starving or homeless. Sometimes you need help to get to a place where you can shift your consciousness, right? Reverend David knows better than most that this work of being a good Samaritan in the world, stopping when you've given yourself a little extra time so that when you see somebody on your way to work who needs help, you can stop. Or you see a stray dog on your way home, you can stop and find out if it has an owner. Or you can, take the time to do something kind for someone else. It's wearing and depleting, depending on where you do it. For people who work in, for example, like he works in these places where there are these cycles of desperate poverty. When we become more and more aware of the devastation of our planet, it's emotionally exhausting work, and I think that keeps some of us from entering into it. He wrote this, he said, before attempts at protecting the vulnerability of others, the care and feeding of the poor and the sick, the tangible care offered to the disenfranchised, it's imperative that you understand what is required to care for yourself. We first have to become skilled at being our own Samaritans, picking ourselves up out of toxic situations, wiping away our mistakes with tender care, and carrying our wounds, not neglecting them, but carrying our wounds to an altar of equal parts compassionate curiosity, like how did I arrive here? How did I get in this condition? And wholehearted commitment to transformation, to dedicating myself to a new normal. We need that kind of tender compassion for ourselves, along with the willingness to make a commitment to be transformed. Make a commitment to become a more evolved human being. We have to be good Samaritans to ourselves in that way first. And we have to do this. What we have to do is whatever is necessary to remember that the Divine One is present no matter what. That the divine life is showing itself, the life of the universe is showing itself whether we see it or not. Even when something looks terrible, that life is there. And the Divine One works for us by working through us, individually and collectively, right? Our personal work, says Reverend David, comes in remembering that the divine order of the universe is always in play. Always. Even in some of the most heinous earthly situations we may face. And we cannot evolve or transcend beyond those circumstances unless we enter into the arena fully prepared, fully empowered. We must offer Samaritan energy to ourselves in the most searing and sincere ways. And that's not surface pampering. That's ceaselessly doing the inner work. Yes, searing Samaritan energy is not like getting a massage. It's like walking through the fire, right? When you take yourself there and say, how did I get here? Why was I so stupid? Why did I react that way? You are walking through the fire. But it's necessary to be able to learn and then take yourself to that altar and forgive yourself and commit to being more. Learning from those things, right? And so it's that inner work that we begin every single day and sometimes every single moment. We have to empower and re-empower ourselves in order to help anybody else empower themselves. And I think that empowerment that I'm talking about comes when we become eternally and internally devoted to our own value in the world. When we're absolutely dedicated to remembering who we are. Because every single one of us is of value in this world. And when we forget it, we're like bringing a totally empty cup with a big crack in it to someone saying, here, let me get you a drink. Our cup won't hold water, right? Our founder, Ernest Holmes, who wrote the Science of Mind textbook and many others, said this in one of his early books. He said, it's only when we view life from the standpoint of an expanding soul, destined forever to exist somewhere, that we can make either sense or sanity out of the human experience. If we view life from the standpoint that each of us is an evolving soul destined to live forever somewhere, we shall see in the long run that life must return to us what we reflect into it. So we have to reflect our empowerment in order to give empowerment. We have to always be cognizant of the fact that we, as well as the person we're assisting, protecting, is an eternally expanding, evolving, divine being, right? We have to cultivate all the things that support that knowing, so our very lives become our spiritual practice. In order to be empowered, we have to remember our eternal divine nature. In order to help others expand and become empowered, we have to continually empower ourselves. So this book of the month, Terry Patton's A New Republic of the Heart, has this wonderful discussion on the difference between practicing and seeking. He says, seekers are looking for something they don't have. On the surface, they may feel and act hopeful, but underneath there's a sense of separation and incompleteness. They're seeking to be more whole, healthy, and integrated. They're seeking to be wiser, happier, less stressed, less inadequate. The problem is, seeking actively prevents the happiness it imagines. Because the process, the act of seeking itself, presumes underlying lack. Do you see that if you seek, you will always seek? It's only when you let yourself become a finder, a realizer, that you get where you want to go. The one who is always seeking will never find. So we have to shift our motivation from this sense of lack to trust in the underlying reality with a capital R. We have to shift from seeking relief from separation to an understanding that separation does not exist. We have to shift from trying to find wholeness to understanding that wholeness already is. And so we have to shift from following that conditioned urge that wants to take us somewhere else, to something else, to get something else, to here and now and within. We have to pause and breathe and be still and allow ourselves to sense the grace, the absolutely miraculous grace of life itself. That which lets us breathe. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty miraculous. And then the only response can be gratitude, the fullness of gratitude. So every time we do that, we're sowing seeds of deeper trust within the fertile ground of our own selves. Peace is already here. Well-being is already here. Wholeness is already here. And when we practice that, instead of seeking, we're planting our trust. More seeds of trust, which will really help us in these crazy times. I have another colleague, a unity minister, who says these times are chaotic. Meaning, yes, there's chaos all around, but there's also order. David Bohm, an American physicist, actually had what I can only call a revelation. That even in the seeming craziness of the quantum world, which is our world, there's this thing he called the implicate order that holds it all together. Even though it may not look held together at all, there is this implicate order in the universe. Ilya Prigogine, who was a Nobel-winning physicist, studied open systems like life, like our planet. And he said, as these systems become more and more and more chaotic, they reach a point where they can either collapse or break through in a spontaneous reordering into something even bigger and better. Well, don't you see that since the universe is this personal thing to us, the driving energy for that is up to us? The driving energy between collapse and transformation is up to us to emit, if you will, into the system, to drive that shift. And I think what most of us are feeling right now is sometimes kind of tongue-in-cheek, we call it divine discontent, a discomfort, a sort of things really are chaotic, or I don't know what to do. That's real common. I read an article that said that Americans are less happy than they've been since we've been asking such questions. Everyone's just on edge and ill at ease. I think that is life with a capital L, the universe, asserting itself through us, asserting the fact that life wants to live. That's what it wants to do, right? It wants to live and express and evolve and grow and express itself more. And so we have to just shift over into this whole notion that there's an implicate order that we can lean into and begin to feel within when we trust that thing which is expressing itself by means of us. When we drop into that place where we feel at peace. And when we do that regularly, and when we run into something in life that makes us crazy, we stop and say, whoa, wait a minute. Think about like a dandelion seed head. Who among us hasn't picked one and gone, right? The dandelion head doesn't fear that. It doesn't go, oh my God, she's going to blow me all over the place. It's not afraid of the winds of nature. The wind, the collapse of that form launches all those seeds off to become new forms of their own. One wind-blown dandelion becomes many. And again, as Emerson said, nature becomes our teacher. Nature becomes our teacher. The beauty of nature is that it is eternally productive. And the beauty of nature reforms itself in the mind. And as Emerson said, not for barren contemplation, but for new creation. So it's ours to plant and grow and nurture that kind of trust. And it's ours to show up to ourselves with the searing Samaritan energy and the honesty to say, why do I repeat the patterns that I repeat? Why do I take offense why do I take offense at all? Right? Why do I have the triggers I have? Why do I harbor the grudges I have? Why do I refuse to touch the wounded person? Am I afraid I'm going to be soiled like some old Pharisee? Why do I not do the kind things that are dropped in my way? Why am I stuck in the patterns I'm stuck in? This kind of curiosity is not judgment, it's curiosity. That's Samaritan energy for ourselves, is why do I do this? With a curiosity, not why do I do that? Which is what we usually do to each other, right? To ourselves. We judge ourselves and then beat ourselves up. And instead of being curious, we make the problem worse. When we're curious enough to say, I wonder why I do that. Because then we can intuit the answers. We can find the sore places, the wounded places in us that need binding up and healing. We can find the places in us where selfishness maybe is a little too close. Selfishness born of fear is a little too close to the surface. We can bring all that Samaritan energy to ourselves and then to the world. And every time we do that, then these roots of trust we've planted grow deeper and deeper and deeper. The trust in the universe expressing itself as us, and trust in my own ability to transform myself, your own ability to transform yourself, and thus your world. So practice is about sowing trust and growing trust and knowing trust in that miraculous grace we call life. And once we stop seeking and lean into that trust and remember that it's here and now, that it already exists, that our wholeness and our oneness and that implicate order, that's what's trying to express itself by means of us. Always. Then trust begins to blossom and flower and bloom and has a fragrance that it sends out into the world that then begins to call it forth in others. All of life stands behind us when we're in that place. All of the universe comes to our aid. So my gift or my request, my idea, my proposal to you this week is that you let life be your practice in simply trusting that grace called life that is already moving in you and as you and through you and trying to express itself more fully as you.